Our next section is going to be on conversions. This video would not be able to cover everything you need to know about converting between different types of values, mainly because conversions is something that you will be doing for the rest of your life. This is going to give us a nice, solid starting point using proportions. By the end of this section, you are required to make some type of conversion chart. Up here, I have 3 different types of examples of how they could be set up, not necessarily in the values. When we're working with conversions, we have converting between weight, volume, length, capacity, temperature. There are a lot of different possibilities. So as you go through this section and start filling out some conversion rates, I would make sure to write them down or type them up because it'll make your life a lot easier as we get to that project. Now, I'm going to be recommending for most of your conversions to be solved with proportions. So that's what we learned in the last section or in section 3. For example, if I'm converting between 23 inches to feet, what I will say is that 23 inches is equal to some number of feet. We're not sure. And then on the side, we're going to have another conversion that's going to be, we know that 12 inches is equivalent to 1 foot. And then we simply convert between those values. And we're going to do that just like we did in the last section. We know that x times 12 goes here because we are multiplying across the x in the equal sign. And then we do 23 times 1, which is 23. Because this is a decimal answer, we're going to divide both numbers by 12. And so x is going to be equal to 23 twelfths, or 1 11 twelfths. And their label is feet. So just under 2 feet. Now, for conversions, we're going to be using calculators a little bit more than other times. If you have any point where you have a decimal inside of your proportion, so that means a decimal inside of your conversion, you are allowed to use a calculator. And if you come up to me now and tell me what I just said, that you're allowed to use a calculator when you have decimals inside of your conversion, then you can get 5 SPs or 1 piece of candy. Now, the next thing we can do is we can convert using cups and gallons, and this is volume. So we know that 4 cups is going to be equal to some number of gallons. Now, I knew that 12 inches was equal to 1 foot, but what if you don't know the conversion between gallons to cups? Well, you're in luck because we have a wonderful tool called Google. And when you go to Google, what I want you to do is I want you to type in the magic math word, which is convert. And when you do conversions, it will be able to help you figure out the conversion from one thing to the other. So I want to convert 1 cup to gallons. And I push enter. And it's going to give me a decimal. 1 cup is equal to 625 thousandths gallons. Now, if you're like, whew, that looks very confusing, what you can do is you, instead of saying cups to gallons, you can type in 1 gallon to cups. And it will usually give you a simpler thing in reverse, which is that 1 gallon is equal to 16 cups. So I'm going to go back to my problem, and I know that 1 gallon is equal to 16 cups. And now I can cross multiply to solve. I do 16 times x is equal to 4 times 1, which is 4. I divide both sides by 16 to get x is equal to 4 sixteenths, which is the same as 1/4, or 25 hundredths of a cup. So I'm going to say x is equal to 1/4 of a gallon. Apologies, I think I said cup there, but it should be 1/4 of a gallon. That is conversions. A couple other possibilities of conversions could have fractions in them. That is totally fine. We're going to set up with the same ratio we did before, and I'm going to say x feet, because that's what we're trying to look for, and I'm going to say 1/4 of a mile. Now, if you're thinking, why don't you turn that to a decimal? You could, but I'm going to leave it as a fraction just to show you that's fine as well. Now we need the conversion between feet and miles. Now, if you know that miles are bigger than feet, then when you do go back to Google, it's going to be better to convert 1 mile to feet than it would be to convert 1 feet to miles. So here we have our next conversion, which is 1 mile is equal to 5,280 feet. So we'll say 1 mile is equal to 5,280 feet. And now we can solve by cross multiplication, which gives us 1 times x is equal to 1/4 times 5,280. So for the sake of time, I did 5,280 divided by 4 for you, and I'm going to check my answer by multiplying that by 4. And if I did this correct, it should be equal to 5,280, which it is. So I get 1,320 feet is equal to 1/4 of a mile. So for the next problem, we need to have x teaspoons, write it like that, and that's equal to 1/3 of a tablespoon. I'm going to write it like that. So now we need the conversion between teaspoons and tablespoons, and I'm pretty sure that a tablespoon is bigger than a teaspoon. And it is. 1 tablespoon is equivalent to 3 teaspoons. So 1 tablespoon is equivalent to 3 teaspoons. Once again, I can cross multiply here. X times 1 is 1x. 1/3 times 3 is exactly 1. Therefore, 1 teaspoon is equivalent to 1/3 of a tablespoon, which makes sense because it's 3 tablespoons is equivalent to 1 . So now we get to problems where we ask questions like, which is greater, which is bigger? So we have to convert between meters and centimeters. So in this example, we need to have a conversion between meters to centimeters. Now, I can convert centimeters to meters or meters to centimeters, doesn't matter. Personally, I am going to convert this to centimeters because I know that the word centa means 100, like century or cents of a dollar. So 1 meter is equivalent to 100 centimeters. So if I take 7 meters times 100, I get 700 centimeters, or 4,332 centimeters. And obviously this one turns out to be a lot bigger. Now, sometimes you're going to be able to know those off the top of your head, and that's good, but conversions can help us for problems like this, which is greater, 85 pounds or 75 kilograms. Now, this is going to be especially difficult because the conversion between pounds to kilograms is a decimal, if I remember correctly. So I'm going to convert 1 pound to kilograms, and that gives me a pretty tricky decimal. So I'm going to try to flip this around and see if it gives me a little bit cleaner of a decimal. And I'm going to go with that. I'm going to say that 1 kilogram is pretty close to 2 2/10 pounds. So I'm going to write that down. That 1 kilogram is equivalent to 2 2/10 pounds, or at least really close to it. So now I'm going to do the conversion. And I can do either one to the other. Personally, I'm just going to change kilograms into pounds because I'm more comfortable with that. And if 1 kilogram is equivalent to 2 2/10 pounds, I want to know what 75 kilograms is equal to in pounds. And this is important, that the number of pounds is higher than the number of kilograms. So my answer better be bigger than 75. And now we're at the point where you're allowed to use a calculator, but I'm going to show you that you don't need one. 1 times x just is 1x. So 1 times x. And 75 times 2 and 2/10. Whoops, I better write it down correctly though. So now to get my answer over here, I'm going to do 75 times 22. And remember that there's 1 digit behind the decimal place when I'm done. 2 times 5 is 10. 14 plus 1 is 15. Done with the 2. 2 times 5 is 10 again. 2 times 7, 14 plus 1 is 15 again. 1 digit behind the decimal point puts my decimal there, which means 75 kilograms is equivalent to 165 pounds. Therefore, this is bigger than 85 pounds. Now, like I said before, conversions is tricky. This does not cover all of the conversions we could cover. I need you to make sure you are writing down your work on every step of the problem, because you will be required to do a mini project at the end of this section.